Hey guys, Stella Christoph here for another Illustrials video, day number 13 of the Daybreak reveals. Let's get started.
Today we're revealing one of my favorite new Illustrials and a strategy that I have been known to love and many others hate. It's time to talk about Mill in Daybreak.
So before we get started with that, he went to a Learn to Play event, I'd say a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, and he brought a Mill deck and he was just destroying people. So the fact that we have cards in Daybreak that are going to go toward the Mill deck is going to be awesome.
We got much more than Mill today as we count down every single day until July 12th when pre-orders open for Daybreak, so get it on your calendar. It's about to be hype. The first card we're revealing today is Lumaru, a beautiful new solar Illustrial with 5 attack and 2 defense that has a super cool effect. When this Lumaru destroys an opponent's Illustrial in battle, that opponent must send the top 3 cards from their deck.
So for once, not for once, because again, we're still in set 3. The only other real Mill card, 2 Mill cards, is a card called Cinder, which when it receives a Fire Spirit, it is a Fire type. When it receives a Fire Spirit, they have to destroy or take the top 2 cards of their deck and put it to the Underworld. So that's the Mill effect, is taking cards from your opponent's deck and sending it to the Underworld. So that has a Mill effect, and then there's a card called Humbust that you can disenchant, or no, every time you activate a rune, your opponent has to mill 2 cards off their deck, and you can do that 4 times a turn. In a game of Illustrials, you can only use 4 invoke runes, or 4 runes on your turn. So the fact that now we have an attacker that does mill, and a 5/2 at that, that's awesome. That's great. The 5 attack for a 1 cost is the highest we've seen so far. I mean, I know we're only in set 3. They have future sets planned out, so who knows what's going to happen at that point. But as of right now, 5 attack for a 1 cost is the highest you have. So the fact that every time you destroy an Illustrial, you're going to send the top 3 cards to the Underworld works out perfect for a Mill deck. You can actually go on the defensive. Humbust has a 1 attack and 2 defense, so you're playing defense the entire game if that's the only card you have.
To the Underworld. This is the first card that we see that provides deck destruction or mill effects towards your opponent. That is a more offensive card. So Lumaru provides this support in terms of being able to be an offensive threat for mill. It also helps stop against Fortell and other solar decks, and it's just a 5 attacker in solar. So I really think Lumaru is going to see some really unique play. This is also an Illustrial that really benefits from misenchanting. So you might see this enchanted with a Water Spirit at times, or maybe even a Fire Spirit as we...
If he's talking about water and fire. So with water, if you add the extra spirit, I wouldn't necessarily misenchant it, but if you're going to add the extra spirit, that's going to be your tsunami blocker. A lot of more advanced strategies, because most people run 2 to 3 tsunamis in their deck, which turns every Illustrial that isn't water or chan to defense. So having an extra spirit on this guy would make sense. I'm seeing a lot of water and solar combos in this set so far. So again, if you're running a water deck and you want to do like a side mill, you can go ahead and put 1 or 2 of these guys in there, Nexus water onto him. That's going to block the effect. Fire, the main thing I can see with that is because Humbust is a fire type, so mill right now is generally fire. There's a couple of frost cards that do it as well, which that deck would run fire as well if you're doing like an actual mill deck. But you'd add solar for the 3rd element, but say your opponent plays Eruption, which makes you expend 3 spirits. If you have an Illustrial with a Fire Spirit, you only have to expend 1.
Break down the rest of the Daybreak metagame, but Lumaru is one that you do not want to miss. Lumaru does indeed ascend into the powerful Ruminous. Ruminous is a 7 attacker with 4 defense, 2 solar, and it's got a super unique effect as well, that when this Ruminous deals damage to an opponent, so they're forced to expend spirits, that opponent must send the top 3 cards from their deck to the Underworld for each spirit they...
So that's completely broken, especially if you can wipe their field or wipe their back row. This is already a 2 cost. So if it deals 2 damage to them, they're going to have to lose 6 cards. And if you can just keep Nexusing, again, water and solar seems to be a good combination right now. Use Poseidon, use your Aepharos, Nexus water onto this guy, or any, it has to be water. Nexus water onto him. Even if you get him on 1 turn, you get him up to a 4 spirits on there, and you do a direct attack. That's going to be 12 off their deck. You only got 40 cards in the deck, so if this guy attacks you 2-3 times, the game's over.
Expended, which means that if Ruminous can get buffed up through Nexus or acquiring a bunch of spirits and attack directly, you can legitimately mill like dozens of cards in a single attack. This card is going to be really interesting to watch. I'm curious to see what kind of cool decks, rogue decks that people can cook up with Lumaru and Ruminous and other mill strategies. I think this is the perfect balance of having an epic Alestral that can do some really cool stuff with milling your opponent without it being like annoying or oppressive. I really am excited about Ruminous. Now, when we talk about mill in Alestrals, you can't have that.
The one thing I say about that card, if you're running a straight mill deck with these new cards, the first form Lumaru, you get that on the field, ascend into Ruminous, use Rise of the Ashes to bring Lumaru back. That's going to be a 5 attack. If you have Temple of the Sun, which powers up Solar Alestrals per spirit, plus 1 attack and defense, that brings it to a 6 attack. Use Lumaru to attack the Alestrals. They're going to have to expend because he destroyed a card, and then use Lumerous, even if it only has 2, direct attack. They're going to lose 6 off the top, or 4 off the top of their deck. So again, in one turn, you can knock out 6 cards off the top of their deck, and that's if you don't have multiple copies of them. That's if you don't have Ruminous with more spirits on there.
Conversation without the beautiful little Humbust and from the top of their deck to their underworld, and you can do this up.
Sorry guys, accidentally double tapped on that one. Yeah, when you cast a rune, your opponent must send the top 2 cards from their deck to the underworld. You can activate this effect up to 4 times in a turn. That's the main reason they said that, is because how many runes you can play on your turn total. So again, with this guy's ability, you're already knocking out 8 off the top of their deck.
4 times in a turn. This is
runes.
really the primary way to run a defensive mill deck in Alestrals as an
Beautiful
alternative
new art,
win cons, where your opponent decks out before they even, have a chance to use all their spirits. But
the one thing I do like about this, if I can stop the video real quick, is that the mill deck, from what I've seen for the reveals for the solar element, that foretell mechanic, looking at the cards on the top of your deck, putting them back in any order, your opponent's starting to set up their strategies. There's 2 or 3 cards so far that have been announced that when you foretell, if you foretell, say, a solar Alestral, you can summon it, you can special cast it that turn. So the fact that we're getting all these mill cards, it's going to be direct opposition to these foretell decks.
Real thing about this Humbust is that it has a new ascension, and that ascension is Humburst. And I'm not kidding when I say I believe that Humburst is like S+ tier Alestral and creature design in general. Moms actually knocked this one out of the park. I love me some Humburst. It is a 4 attacker with 3 defense.
The one thing I'll say too, because it really is nice artwork, obviously it's a bug. It almost looks like a phoenix to a degree, but if you look on the very bottom of the card where it's in black towards the left, it actually, every single card shows you who illustrated those cards, designed those cards. So I think that's awesome that Alestral does that. It's not just, they're not just one company. There's all these content creators that they had hired into it. They hired these artists, and let's give recognition where it deserves. These people are killing it. Again, I've said it in multiple videos, especially with Temple of the Sun. That is my #1 card. That is my favorite design so far in Alestrals. Attention to detail is amazing. Not one card has been a bad design. You might dislike one, you might like one more, but nothing, in my opinion, would be a bad design.
And fire and solar, so blending those elements together, you can disenchant a fire and a solar spirit from this Humburst to force an opponent to send the top 6 cards from their...
So initially when I see this, so it's a 2-cost 4/3. Zephyrog is as well, which is water and wind, and that attacks your spirit deck directly. If they're going to have a broken ability, it makes sense to bring the attack and defense down. So again, if you're running a fire and solar, whichever combo you want to do, if you get your Temple of the Sun out, if you get your Volcanic Forge out, at least you're going to bring the attack and defense up slightly, especially if you can add more spirits. The first thing I see with this is you have to disenchant each spirit, 1 of each, to activate the ability. Top 6 cards off the deck, absolutely awesome, bonkers. You're going to have to sacrifice this guy to play it, or you're going to have to really have a good Nexus mechanic in your deck. Me personally, looking at this, what I would do, I would not have my opponent, obviously you don't want them to know it's in your hand. I would set up my back row with counter runes, any kind of protection I can, even if you're going to run artifact runes. A good example would be the new Golden Fleece, which protects it once from being destroyed by battle or card effect. Get the extra Alestral or extra spirits on the guy, however you're going to summon it. But if you can activate its ability twice that turn, even if you use it as a sacrificial lamb, knocking off 12 cards instead of 6, again, your opponent's down to 10 cards, 11 cards, you win right there because they can't toss out, they can't mill any more of their deck. Again, the attack and defense, it is what it is. If you're using this as a sacrificial lamb, it makes sense. But me personally, I plan on making a mill deck because of all these awesome cards, especially it's going to be a fire or solar based. But there needs to be some kind of protection. You need to be prepared to protect this guy. And when you ascend it, you need to make sure you have at least two of each spirits ready to go on him. Even if you summon him and you play Altar of the Stars or you play Circle of the Sky to get those extra spirits onto him, something so you can activate that ability twice that turn. I personally would not use this card in the beginning of the game. I would use it more late game, especially if you're running a mill deck. You're going to be tearing cards off the deck anyway. But if you use this too early and you only say have one or two of these in your deck and they destroy it, you don't have Rise of the Ashes, you're just kind of hurt yourself in the long run.
Deck to the underworld. That's right, they're forced to mill 6 from this thing blowing itself up basically, or if you can enchant more spirits to it, you can have it basically use that blow up effect to force them to mill. And I think that there's a few key cards to highlight with this. This is searchable with First Light, and it can work really, really well as a late game finisher after you utilize your Humbust effect. So I can't wait to see what people cook up with Humburst.
That's actually a really good point. If you use your Humbust, say you have Ambrosia and Nectar of the Guards, for instance, or Earthquake, whatever combination you want to do, activate his ability twice. That's going to be at least 4 cards off the top of their deck. Then you bring up Humburst and use his ability. That's going to give you a total of 10 cards destroyed that turn.
Card that, like I said, I really love it. I think it's designed as S tier, and I really think it's a fun effect as like a 1 of or maybe a 2 of in some more explosive mill decks. And last but certainly not least, you might be surprised to see this card added into this reveal, but it is a new artifact rune, Bow of Apollo. Bow of Apollo is Apollo's signature artifact indeed, and it is a 1-cost solar artifact that says the empowered Alestral can attack opponent spirit decks directly. When Apollo is enchanted and you deal damage to your opponent, you can return a solar spirit from your underworld.
So right away, I see this, that when you have... Sorry, guys, my screen flipped and I lost my train of thought. When you have Ruminous out on the field and, again, you're going to deal damage and you're going to have to mill cards depending on how many spirits. You activate Bow of Apollo so he can attack directly. Again, a good card to have. The fact that it's an artifact and it's a 1-cost definitely makes it better than the other artifacts, in my opinion, because it's not going to cost you as much. The good thing about this one as well, combine it with Lumaru or not Lumaru, but combine it with Ruminous, that when you can attack directly, you can almost save this card towards the end. Protect your Ruminous, try to get a couple more spirits on it, but then out of nowhere, throw this artifact down, attack your opponent directly. They're not going to be expecting it, and then you can probably mill the rest of their deck depending on where you're at in the game. Even if you do this your second turn, for instance, and you get 2 or 3 spirits, you're going to toss out 6 cards off the top of their deck. Turn 1 or turn 2. So really good turn, or a really good card to have. Anything that lets you attack directly, I'm all for. Especially if you're going to be dealing direct damage to your opponent on their spirit deck and milling their actual deck.
Your spirit deck, so you get a little regeneration there when paired with Apollo, but the application
and the regeneration part too. Water has the most regeneration in the game right now. I would say Earth might be the next one, but the fact that you have this one that just passive recovery works out perfect.
For Bow of Apollo are enormous. I mentioned this in the same context as Ruminous, an Alestral that really relies on dealing damage directly, and as more of those are introduced into Alestrals, Bow of Apollo and its validity will increase. This is also a 1-cost artifact, so we'll see if that makes any difference there for all my artifact enjoyers. But Bow of Apollo is going to have some really cool use cases in Daybreak and beyond.
Even if you're not running a mill deck, say you're running a Water Nexus deck, this is only going to cost you 1 Solar Spirit. If you have even 3 of these in your deck, roughly you're only going to need 2 Solar Spirits because you're going to have Ambrosia and you're already going to have Recovery because it's a water deck, especially if you're running Dratagua. Have this set up. You're going to keep Nexusing every single turn. Say you got 2 Apherosis and Poseidon with 3 out. Nexus 3 spirits from Poseidon onto one of your Alestrals. Have this guy attack directly. You can deal upwards of 6-7 damage 1 turn just by 1 combo.
Beyond as a unique artifact allowing you to attack directly. I told y'all today's reveal was hype, and as a casual mill enjoyer myself, I just love me some Humburst. Let me know what you guys think about
Great reveals. Again, anything with a mill deck, now that they're actually going to give mill a little bit more support, especially on the attacking side. Revealing Humburst as well. That way, because most of the time now, if you're running a mill deck, your Humbust is a one-off. You're only really getting that ability once a turn if you're not protecting it, or if you don't have, say, cards like Pandasin, which lets you bring Invoke Runes back from the Underworld. So the fact that you can go ahead and play your Humbust, use the special ability, ascend it to Humburst, and then even if you're only attacking that turn, or if you have a couple cards that can protect it. For me, just kind of looking at it, it's more of like going hard. Have at least one Rise of the Ashes in that deck. That way you can bring that Humburst back. Say it's late game, you're going to play your Humburst, you're going to knock off 6 off the top of their deck, play Rise of the Ashes, which, mind you, that combo is going to cost you 5 Spirit, so be prepared for that. But bring Humburst back, do it one more time, end the game. Mill the last 6 cards, 5 cards off the top of their deck. But that's all I got for you guys today. My name is Stellar Christoph. I will see you guys tomorrow for day 4 of the reveals. Hope you guys all have a stellar day. See ya.